All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in for our September BioBites. We are very pleased to be joined by Jaimie Dufresne, who manages the Elements store at the BioMed Center New England. She has extensive experience in supplementation in all forms of biological health. So we're very grateful to have you, Jaimie, and we're very excited, to hear and to learn with you today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I love everything that the Marion Institute does. I know that at the BioMed Center, we focus a lot on, health and what we put into our bodies, but I think you guys do such a great job with the kind of legwork of getting sustainable farming and getting, good food to people in need. So I appreciate everything that you guys do.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to get going here in just a minute. As a reminder to just please keep yourself on mute. And if you do have questions, we will save plenty of time later on in our time with Jaimie to have those answered. And you can put them in the chat box if you wish as well. And that's where I'll be looking for them later. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up Jaimie, your presentation, and we'll get rocking and rolling. Sound good?
Sounds good. All right. So yeah, my name is Jaimie, and I am the supplement coordinator, department leader of the Elements store. We're a brick and mortar store, but we're soon to be launching our website so that you can purchase some of the items that we sell here. But I'm also able to drop ship a lot of things to patients and customers. So if there's things that people want to order through me, I also fulfill that as well. You can move on to the next slide. Start getting into, so my background, I've always had an interest in alternative medicine and holistic health ever since I was younger. My mom actually had a herb store, and I used to love going there, and we used to sell herbs by by the ounce and stuff. So I just always was fascinating with plants and medicinals. Then I went on to get my bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics from the University of Rhode Island. I did not pursue my registered dietitian degree. Well, it would have been a registered dietitian, but it wasn't for me. You usually do a 6 months internship to pursue that. And I wanted to stay on kind of the more alternative path. Some of the struggles that I've gone through personally have kind of helped me take my, foundation that I got from URI, where I was able to dive a little bit deeper. Some things helped me, some things did not, but I'm always willing to learn and kind of see what types of things could help certain, diseases or certain ailments. So I kind of have a knack for, looking at the science, but also looking at, anecdotal evidence and what different practitioners are utilizing. So my drive was for my own personal struggles, but I've come out with a lot of knowledge that I feel like I like to share with other people struggling with things that they might not get help from their, allopathic practitioners. So I do have a certification. I'm a nutrition and wellness consultant, and I started working at the BioMed Center about 2 years ago. Before that, I did do some consulting and one-on-one work with people. I used to work in Connecticut at kind of a wellness center there. And I love working with people. I love helping people. I like taking things that can be pretty complicated, but really helping people understand how it applies to them and empowering people to make, good choices. A lot of information out there, especially with the internet, but I like to assist any way I can with patients and people in general, just to kind of help. So yeah, passionate support and empower others to reach their goals. That's me. All right, go to the next slide. So topics for today, I wanted to keep it simple just because there's so much you can talk about with supplements, but I wanted people to be able to take stuff home from it. So we're going to talk about common nutritional supplements and why you may need them, what to look for when purchasing supplements, and then also how to optimize nutritional status. So what are dietary supplements? I'm just actually going to move this so I can read. There we go. A dietary supplement is a product that is in the form of a liquid, capsule, tablet, powder, sometimes gummies, drinks that contains a substance that is intended to supplement or support the diet. So we're going to be talking about things today, not more so about, vitamins, minerals, not so much about herbs or homeopathics. Those definitely are best guided by a practitioner, but we're kind of going to keep it more focused on the vitamins and minerals today. May contain vitamins, minerals, or sometimes they do contains herbs or other botanicals, amino acids. This is just what a supplement is in general, but again, we're going to kind of shy away from the herbs today. Amino acids, which are breakdowns of proteins, enzymes, glandular tissues, and extracts. So all of those can be part of a supplement, and they can use both preventative and wellness support, but they can also be used in a therapeutic manner, which is best guided by a qualified practitioner. So sometimes they're not always a medical doctor. Sometimes they can be chiropractors, nurse practitioners, registered dietitians. So something I'm a huge proponent of is that you cannot supplement your way out of a poor quality diet and lifestyle. That is always the thing that I help people to start with. Is you want to be having a well-rounded diet, you want to be drinking adequate fluids, and you also want to be working on your sleep and stress. No matter how many supplements you take or the most pristine diet, if you live very high stress, not sleeping a lot of caffeine, a lot of alcohol, you're just going to be wasting your money. So that's always where you want to start. And then the things that you do consume, whether it's through supplement or diet, your body will be better able to utilize them. So very important thing to remember. People might always ask, like, well, I do, consume a good diet. Why would I still need to take certain nutrients? And the reason for that is, industrial farming, the way that we, farm today, we don't rotate our crops. So the soil is really nutrient depleted. So even if you have, a delicious, organic apple, the way that we, industrial farm doesn't make them as nutritious as possible, which is why you should always go for a local produce when possible. Monocropping, so we don't have as much of a variety of certain vegetables and fruits. Like, for example, there's so many different types of tomatoes, but you go to the store and you'll probably only be able to get like 3 or 4. So we've kind of reduced the variety, which then can reduce the amount of nutrients that we are exposed to. Hypersanitation, so everything, the way that it's processed, so to kill bad bacteria also can kill good bacteria. So we're not getting the probiotics that we used to get exposed to. And then over processing, we live in a world of convenience, so we like to just grab and go, but the downfalls of that is that things are not as nutritious. They take a lot of nutrients out of food when you process them. So different fats, the germ of, wheat or the bran, that'll get stripped away, and then we end up adding them back, so things become enriched. And those vitamins and minerals that we enrich with are not really the bioavailable that our body can utilize properly. So even the best quality diet, because of these things, can lead to some deficiencies that some people might need to work on. Sorry, I had to move this. So Another reason why people might need supplements is they might have a high need for certain nutrients because of stress or injury or a certain disease state. So for example, you broke your arm, you might need some extra vitamin C to help with collagen production. So things like that. Infections, especially gut infections, can impair your absorption. Also can rob you of your nutrients. Food allergies and sensitivities because of the inflammation. So if you have an unidentified food allergy or sensitivity, which can cause a lot of inflammation, that can impair your ability to absorb nutrients. Poor absorption in general. High stress lifestyle. Stress causes us to utilize a lot of B vitamins. So if we live in just day to day where we have high cortisol, our body's not in rest and digest. So we're not able to properly utilize the food that we are absorbing or consuming. Certain medications can impair your ability to or make you need worse nutrients. So for example, statins, they can deplete you of your CoQ10. So certain medications might, make you have a high need for certain things. Heavy training in athletic sports. Sometimes you might be needing a lot more protein, a lot more calories, a lot more certain amino acids to help with repair. Dental issues can be a problem if your bite is off or, improper fitting, not your, what do you call them? I'm having an issue. Dentures, sorry. Proper fitting dentures could all, again, impair your mastication, which is your first step of digestion. And then certain dietary restrictions, that might be food allergies, food sensitivities. So if you have a restricted diet, that can also limit the amount of nutrients you're exposed to. It can cause certain deficiencies. All right. So multivitamins. I kind of started with multivitamins as that's kind of most people are on a multivitamin, or it's one thing that they kind of like to do to ensure there are no deficiencies. So they contain a broad range of nutrients designed to ensure adequate intake of the key vitamins and minerals that are needed for all our organ systems to function optimally and for the body to maintain homeostasis. So these are your daily values. So the daily value is what the recommended is to have. That says that about 80 to 90% of the population they get optimal level. That's their optimal level. So, but it doesn't always mean that it's your optimal level. So usually they're set to just avoid deficiencies or diseases like scurvy or rickets, but they don't take into account your individual need. They don't even take into consideration your age and your gender. So that's what you'll see most of the time on the package of foods. Will say your daily value. And so multivitamins are kind of just to help with those daily values. They're not mega doses on certain nutrients. So when you take one, they're kind of just to kind of fill in those gaps. But if you have a severe deficiency or a high need for certain things, you might have to take them in individual dosages. Next one. So what do you want to look for in a good multi? You want to have vitamins A, C, D, E, and K. And then you want to have 8 of the B vitamins. So B1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 12. And then choline, which is, they categorize it as a B vitamin, but it's not technically. But it's a good thing to have in a multi, and then also to have them in some methylated forms. So methylated just means that it's more bioavailable. It's kind of like a relay race where a methyl group is attached to kind of get it to the next step in absorption. Some people, and you would know this based on genetics, are either over methylators or under methylators. So if you've been tested for that, or you're working with a practitioner, so they could help, with that in mind, you could determine whether or not you need all methylated forms or not methylated forms. But in general, for most people, I recommend to have them in some methylated form. So you might have vitamin B6 where it has half of it is in a non-methylated form and half of it is in the methylated form. Most of the time when you're getting nutrients that are in packaged foods that are enriched, they're not in the methylated form. So if someone is a under methylator where they need more methylation, eating a lot of processed foods can actually make them feel pretty darn bad because they're getting a lot of nutrients that their body's not been able to process into a bioavailable form. So, and then also minerals, zinc, selenium, calcium, magnesium, chromium, molybdenum, and manganese. And another thing you want to look for is multiple dose. I don't really recommend very often one a day, where sometimes it is appropriate to people, but I tend to like ones that are multiple doses. Like you'll take one capsule in the morning, one capsule in the evening. That's because B vitamins are water soluble, so your body will take what it needs and excrete the rest. So if you take one dose of a multivitamin, your body will probably excrete a lot of it out because at that time it only needs a certain amount. So and also we eat multiple times a day, so our body is in constant need of nutrients, especially minerals. Our body doesn't really do that great of a job at storing minerals. So that's something to consume multiple times per day. One of the ones that we carry that I find a lot of practitioners recommend, it's a good overall multivitamin, is the Pure Encapsulation Nutrient 950. They also have one that comes without iron if some people are avoiding iron, and they have a couple others, some with vitamin K, but that's a good overall brand that we like here. Okay. So yeah, multivitamins and minerals. So together, I kind of differentiate because when you say a multivitamin, it also has minerals in it. So I just wanted to clarify that. So you're looking for a well-rounded multivitamin mineral. It should cover basic needs. However, additional supplementation may be needed with certain nutrients, like I had said earlier. High doses are not generally found in multis just because they would be ginormous. they have to pack so much into it so that there's, that's why people really tend to call them horse pills, because there's so much in it. So when it comes to needing a higher dose, I recommend to have those in individuals. Again, too much to cram in one product. Something I wanted to discuss and to be mindful of, as I see it all the time, is something called window dressing, to where they add a lot of minute ingredients to make it look like there's a lot in there. And you might be like, wow, it's like 50 ingredients. But a lot of the times they're just very, very small amounts, and they're not therapeutic dosages. So they tend to be a lot more expensive. That's why when I noted on the slide before is what you should be really looking for a multivitamin. A lot of times they'll just, again, but sometimes they do have good things like for, liver health or things like that. But for the most part, I find that they're in small amounts. So kind of keeping it simple with a multivitamin is usually the way I go. All right, so my AllStars. So these are ones that I think are extremely important and that most people are not getting enough of or are deficient. So vitamin D, absolutely. I mean, we see it all the time here. I think it's something that you should ask your PCP to get done at least once a year. I actually think twice is even better, because then you can see what your D levels are in the middle of winter, because even if you are supplementing, you want to make sure that you're taking enough, because if you're just taking, a 5,000 IUs, is that enough to get your levels up? So it's all individual. Sometimes you might have to play around with the dose. You might want to play around with the form. So vitamin D is very inexpensive to get checked. So something that I think you should kind of have your baseline and get that done at least once or twice a year. Magnesium, not the best one to test for through blood levels, but most people are magnesium deficient. And again, that ties back to magnesium comes from foods and they get it through the soil. So we have a lot of nutrient depleted soils, which then affects our magnesium levels. Also, magnesium is needed for so many different processes. It's probably, I think it's like 400 different processes in the body. So you need it for a lot of different things. Also, there's a lot of things that rob us of our magnesium, like indoor living. A lot of exposure to blue light that can rob us of our magnesium. So if we're constantly staring at a computer screen, going home and watching TV, that can impair our magnesium levels. And then vitamin K. Vitamin K is something that is just starting to get the credit it deserves. So vitamin K works kind of synergistically with vitamin D and calcium. Calcium is needed for strong bones, but your body needs vitamin D to absorb it. And then you also need the vitamin K to tell the calcium where to go. If it doesn't have that, it could lead to calcification, which we definitely don't want. You can get vitamin K. So vitamin K, we're again learning a lot about it, but what we do know is there's vitamin K1, which is found in leafy greens. That's good for clotting. And then there's vitamin K2, and that's found mostly in grass-fed butters and cheeses, and that is needed for blood thinning. So when it comes to vitamin K, you want to make sure you're getting grass-fed stuff, because if not, the cows actually make the vitamin K when they're grass-fed. So if you're getting conventional dairy products, it's not going to have the vitamin K2 in it. It's actually going to be colored with something called annatto or beta carotene to make it look like it does. So another reason why to buy locally when you can and get it grass-fed. And then calcium. So calcium is another one needed for strong bones, but again, it's really in these in combination. I find people tend to only focus on calcium, and we see a lot of fortified foods with calcium, but they tend to use calcium carbonate. So calcium carbonate is just like that. Think about chalk, that it's more likely to calcify. So I think that getting enough calcium in adequate calcium amounts is definitely important, but if we don't have enough vitamin D, then or enough vitamin K or magnesium, then it's kind of not going to all work together. And again, remember, vitamin T increases your calcium. So sometimes instead of adding more supplementation of calcium, making sure your vitamin D levels are adequate, or taking a supplement of vitamin D might be your first priority, because that will help, again, you absorb your calcium that you are getting through your diet. Most of the time, I'd say it's vegans that definitely need to supplement on their calcium, even though you can get it through other dietary sources like leafy greens, calcium through meat products are the more bioavailable and better to raise your calcium levels. All right, next slide. Okay, so the next product that I find a lot of people ask about are fish oils. So your body needs two different essential fats, is omega-3 and omega-6s. They work kind of antagonistically. So omega-6s are your pro-inflammatory and your omega-3s are your anti-inflammatory. So that's what's needed for a proper inflammatory response. You get inflammation, it helps with healing, and then you reduce the amount of inflammation. So, but what happens is, again, in our food system, we have so much omega-6s. So there should be a ratio, and it's about 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. Some people say up to 4 to 1, meaning 4 to 1, 4 omega-6s to 1 omega-3s. But some say that it's up to 20 to 1 right now in the standard American diet, because we put so much omega-6s, corn oil, soybean oil, they're in our salad dresses, they're what people in restaurants used to cook with, and they're much cheaper. So the ratio is important, and also we have so much chronic inflammation. So not only do we have them in the wrong ratios, but we also have so much inflammation. So consuming more omega-3s can assist with that. But also another thing is lowering your omega-6s. So starting to incorporate more fats that have omega-3s, and also including more fatty fishes into your diet, and then also being mindful of the omega fats. Now, omega-6s are good for you. It's just you want them in the right ratios. And again, most salad dressings, they'll use like sunflower oil, soybean oil. So maybe looking for something that has like avocado oil, which doesn't necessarily have omega-3s, but it doesn't have as much omega-6s. It has more of the monounsaturated fats. So some vegetarian sources are hemp seeds, flax seeds, and walnuts. Those are in the form of alpha linoleic acid. Unfortunately, our body's not that great at converting that type into DHA and EPA. So while they're good sources of other nutrients too, they're not ideal for it to be your sole source of omega-3s. Again, some people are vegan, vegetarian for different reasons, but you can get a concentrated source from, I believe it's algae. So they do have them, but you want to make sure that you're definitely getting enough. And again, flax seeds are great. They have a lot of other components to it as well, but we're just not that efficient at converting it to the EPA and DHA. So with the EPA and I think it's on the next slide. So that's all for this one. There we go. So what to look for. So for a fish oil supplement, you want to look at it have about 2,000 milligrams of omega-3 oils. So that's going to have EPA and DHA. Those are the two types of omega-3s. So a ratio is about 1 to 1 or 2 to 1 more of the EPA as opposed to the DHA. But some practitioners and some individuals might warrant that to be a little bit different, but that's kind of more of a general rule. So for example, if you're looking, to reduce inflammation systemically, you want to, kind of prioritize and look for higher EPA, but then the DHA can also be very helpful for brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, or, cognitive health. Source from small fish, because such as sardines, anchovies, because the larger the fish, the longer they've been alive, and they usually can accumulate toxins and heavy metals. So the smaller fish are kind of more ideal. And also to buy from reputable companies. So important for fish oils, because not only do they have to be sourced from good ingredient or good fish and sustainably sourced, but also they want to be stored properly. Some have been known to add other types of oils into it, like hydrogenated oils, which you don't want. And so that's kind of one of my biggest, beefs with buying fish oils from, big box stores like CVS and Costco, is because they not only will have the fish oil, which may or may not have what it says it does, but also you'll find that they put a lot of other things into it to help with the, preservation of it. But they put like dyes and other types of corn oil and soy oil, which I think are unnecessary. And then also make sure you store your omega-3s properly. Capsules are usually fine to keep in the cabinet, but if you get a liquid, most of the time it needs to be refrigerated, and then just keep them away from heat. So one of the ones that we carry here is the Super EFA Forte liquid, which has one of the highest amounts per teaspoon that I've seen. Great company. So that's one that we carry here. And it doesn't have a huge fishy taste. Some people don't like that. It does come in capsules. You get more bang for your buck when you buy it through liquid. You get more servings. It has like a hint of orange. I kind of put it on salad dressings. So I kind of get in there, but most people like it. So it's a good All right, so our next topic is probiotics. So each organ system has its own microbiome. So our mouth has its own microbiome, our skin has its own microbiome, and our gut has its own microbiome. And there's trillions of bacteria DNA that we have in our GI tract, and we rely on these different bacteria for a bunch of things, such as helping us digest our foods. They do create nutrients like short chain fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory. They produce some of vitamin K, not a huge amount, but some through fermentation. They are a lot of cell signaling. They're a huge part of our immune system. So very, very important. And we are just at the tip of the iceberg learning about probiotics and what each does and the detriments of not having a robust bacteria diversity. So some of the things that have contributed to some dysbiosis in these bacteria are overuse of antibiotics. I got to say, practitioners are much more hesitant now than they used to be, 10, 15, 20 years ago. They actually, would do it more prophylactically. So taking antibiotics, but also giving antibiotics to the animals that we eat, that's something that does still happen in conventional farming. So again, always good to know who your farmer is and how they treat their animals. Again, farmers would give them to animals prophylactically, which then we would ingest. Also, in chlorine in our food supply, our water supply. And chlorine can, especially even in small amounts, even though you don't detect it, can kill off some good bacteria. So another good reason to have good clean water, good filtration system. Also, the ultra pasteurizing of foods, again, like I spoke about before. So that's not replenishing our bacteria like we used to get multiple times a day, having certain yogurts, different fermentable foods like kimchi and sauerkraut. So those were all, we didn't have them in large amounts, we just had a little bit throughout the day, which would help replenish that. So all of those have contributed. I'm sure I'm leaving some out. Stress is another thing that can cause dysbiosis, just because the chemical that are released when we are stressed can have a negative effect on our good bacteria. So all that together has caused some dysbiosis, which is why looking to probiotics can help. Next slide. So now if you're looking for specific strains for specific, ailments, you can find there's a lot of good information out there, or working with a practitioner. But if you're just looking for an overall good probiotics, so for example, you just want to support the immune system, these are the bacteria I would look for. So Lactobacillus acidophilus is one of the most abundant that's found in the body, in the GI tract, and then also certain types of bifidobacterium. So all of these are pretty well researched and good for, I'd say, overall immune support. But again, there are some other ones that you can take, for example, that can help with, that can also be like an antibacterial. So for example, Saccharomyces boulardii, that can be good for GI infections. It could also help keep down yeast. So, but again, we could have a whole topic on just probiotics, but I was just trying to keep it simple and, have some ideas for a well-rounded one. You want to look for about 10 to 15 billion per dose. Some have very minimal amount, which I wouldn't spend money on. If you're going to spend money on trying to have a dose that's about 10 to 15 billion, that would be a lot higher if you had just been on antibiotics. I would probably go for something that's almost like 50 billion or higher if you were just recently on a round of antibiotics. But again, for maintenance, you can, find some that have these different strands. The HMF multi has all of those strands, but you can also rotate them to kind of help broaden the bacteria that you're exposed to. Prebiotics are also helpful for feeding the good bacteria. But if you eat a good balanced diet with a lot of fiber, I don't really find a need for the prebiotics. I think prebiotics are best if you have a very poor digestion and you limit any type of fibers, just because of the symptoms that you get. Maybe a formulated prebiotic could help with that. But for the most part, like things like Jerusalem artichokes, jicama, all great prebiotic foods. Soil-based are another type of probiotics that are really helpful and for people with very sensitive GI tracts. Usually when that could be a symptom of having dysbiosis, but adding high dose probiotics like the one I talked about before might be too sensitive for or too much for certain people. So they tend to do better with starting with the soil-based. But also you want to make sure that you're storing them properly. Some need to be refrigerated, some do not. Just look at the back. Some are shelf stable. And I think they're pretty well tolerated with food. Some people will say, or some practitioners might say, to take them without food so that they don't, that is better absorbed. But for the most part, I think most of our practitioners recommend to take it with food, since your stomach acid would be lowered and less likely for them to die. But then some of them are enteric coated. So there are a lot of different variations, but I would just read the label and see how to take it. Okay, so protein powders. Protein powders are pretty common, I think, for various reasons. I think people like the convenience out of them, where you might be starting to try to cook more, eat less processed food. So having one meal that is made from, kind of just like a smoothie, I think is very appealing to people. Also, people who have very, sensitive stomachs or might have some GI issues, they might find that the protein powders in smoothies can be a little bit more easier to digest while they're working on their symptoms. So there's kind of two broad types. There's vegan, which tends to be different things like pea proteins, rice proteins, pumpkin seed proteins, and then there's also whey. So whey is dairy derived. So if you're looking to avoid dairy, whey is not the one that I would suggest. But whey is really good for building muscle. So if that's your goal, whey could be a good one. Or if you're trying to combat, losing muscle as we get older, that could be a very good choice. So I usually recommend about 15 to 20 grams per serving. Sometimes we're adding a lot of other things that might have protein. So getting anything higher might not be, ideal, especially if we're adding yogurts or, nut butters. So that can beef up the protein content as well. Be mindful of sugar and additives and also artificial flavorings, especially when it says like chocolate chip cookie dough flavoring. That's usually not all natural. So usually for natural ones, I find a vanilla or a chocolate, because they can use just cocoa or they can use a vanilla extract. And then I kind of add some other things to kind of vary the flavorings. Like I said, nut butters, sometimes using different fruits can help modify the flavor. You want to look for organic, non-GMO, and or glyphosate free. So a lot of the, most of the time when I talk about, or when I advocate for getting something organic or not, I'll refer to the Clean 15 or the Dirty Dozen. So if it's something that's not highly sprayed, you can get away with having it not organic. But when it comes to protein powders, I found out recently that they're using glyphosate as a desiccant. So it doesn't matter if the crop tends to be a highly sprayed crop. they're doing it now to shorten the time it takes to make the protein powder. So that's very disheartening that they're doing that, because it's actually a concentrated form of whatever you're consuming. So if it's a rice protein, it's a concentrated form. So you could potentially be getting a lot of glyphosate. That's not usually what I'm looking for in a protein powder. So looking for, if it's organic, you don't have to worry about it. But if it's not, try to look for a glyphosate-free sticker or label to make sure that you're not getting any more of that than we're already getting into our food system. One other caveat that I wanted to mention about protein powders, especially if you're having it as a shake, because there's a lot of protein that's hitting our system without having the other things that are a component of our cephalic phases of digestion, which basically is just like smelling our food, chewing our food, and seeing our food. Because we don't get those components, it can be a lot of protein that just hits the system all at once. So having a protein powder, but then maybe having a couple, pieces of apple, anything that can help with chewing can help, kind of remind your body, oh yeah, we got some work to do. Also kind of maybe leaving some chunks of things that are not completely blended up, that can help make your body realize that it has a meal to digest. So just something to be thinking about. It's definitely more broken down than like a piece of steak, but again, our body does rely on those other cues to let us know that it's breaking food down. And with a protein powder, you don't get those. So just to be mindful of that. But I also like to make protein puddings, which is just less of the liquid. And that kind of, it almost has like a yogurt texture. You can add different seeds and nuts and berries to that as well.
Jaimie, I think we need to follow up with some protein pudding recipes.
Oh yeah, I love, again, it's convenience. I think the convenience out of them is great, that you can say, all right, it's one less thing I have to do to cook. I mean, cooking 3 meals is a lot, so if we can narrow it down to 2. I think it's good.
Sounds great. And
all right,
yeah, last but not least, your information.
Yeah, so that again, people who know me at the center, I can talk all day about this kind of stuff. Again, I just love giving information to people to kind of help figure out what is best for them, because there is a lot of products out there, a lot of information out there, but I like to keep it simple. I like to get people kind of focus on what is going to get them to their goals, but then also kind of weaving in other things. And maybe if they're looking for some vitamin C from a product, maybe highlighting where else they can get vitamin C. Hibiscus tea is very high in vitamin C, and adding lemon juice. So I kind of just like being able to have that opportunity to start that that dialogue with people. So you can call me, email if you have questions, or come visit me here at the center. We have a lovely center, and I'm always here. So any of those, if I have a question that, or you have a question that I could possibly, help with or be a resource with. And like I said, I order products. We have drop shipped all the time. People can pick them up here. We have lots of different vendors. So you're not going to get a product that's been sitting on a shelf for a year or 2. So that's kind of our added value of me.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I think hopefully that came through. I know Eric or Jaimie has, sorry, I just saw a chat box that I didn't come up, but Jaimie has so much knowledge and wisdom. And I know that, as she pointed out, there's a lot of kind of lesser known tips and tricks and knowledge that goes into choosing safe supplements. Obviously, you could walk or drive to your local CVS or Costco or something, but as I've learned largely through Jaimie, there's a lot that we just don't know. And so to have someone to help guide you through that process is appreciated. And Jaimie, we certainly appreciate you. So, all right, we're gonna, Jaimie, fortunately, I know the stuff like the backside of your hand. Hopefully you know the backside of your hand, because we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
And not a ton of time. So we're gonna do our best, and
all right,
we can hang tight for an extra minute or 2.
Sure.
As promised, participants are welcome to submit questions ahead of time. So I'm going to start with a few of those, and then we'll jump to those that have been submitted in our chat box. The first that was sent in was, do you agree with the recommendation to not take magnesium and zinc at the same time?
Okay. Yeah, so different minerals can compete with other minerals. So my recommendation for that is that if you're just taking a general calcium magnesium, because there's a lot of products that have both of those ingredients in them, and they're usually, again, generally a 2-to-1 ratio, where twice as much calcium to magnesium. Now, if you're taking more than that, which I wouldn't recommend taking more than 500 milligrams of calcium at once, just because your body won't be able to absorb it. But if you are taking larger amounts of any of those, I would recommend to take them maybe about an hour to 2 hours apart from each other. But again, it's individual. If you're just taking one, like 500 milligrams of calcium with 200 milligrams of magnesium, I don't really see a problem in taking that together. It's when you're taking larger amounts. Same thing with the zinc. Most of the research that impedes that when you take zinc impedes the absorption of calcium, it's very large amounts. Like they're taking about 100 milligrams of zinc, which most people are not taking. Zinc is usually about 15 milligrams that you're taking, that you'd probably find in a multi. If you're taking it in larger doses based on a recommendation from a practitioner, or you're taking it for immune support, I wouldn't take it in that high of a dose for that long, because then it can just mess up your balance of copper. So eventually, if you were taking it for longer than 3 months, I would probably recommend to have a little bit of copper in a multi. So again, I hope that answers it. So yes, if you're taking large amounts, more than what I just mentioned, then yes, I would take them about an hour or 2 apart. So you could take your probably your calcium in the morning and then take your magnesium at night. And if you did take a higher amount of zinc, you could take that in the midday. Best taken with meals. Most people tolerate it better with meals, especially zinc. Most people don't do well with it on an empty stomach.
Thank you so much. Another one, melatonin, not something we talked about earlier today, but do you consider melatonin a helpful supplement for better quality sleep?
So melatonin is something that many people do take it for sleep. I hesitate long-term taking melatonin. I think it's a great supplement if you are changing time zones, if you're on vacation to kind of help get you to sleep, or if you have some, something going on in your life that your mind's very active. I wouldn't rely on that daily to go to sleep. I would focus more on hygiene. So melatonin your body does make. In the morning, your body starts making more cortisol, and then it kind of tapers out midday, and then your cortisol level drops, and then your melatonin levels start going up. So if you're giving your body the signal that it's not it's daytime at night, then your body's going to stop making melatonin. So that's why the blue light blocking glasses can be very helpful, especially if you have a hard time not watching TV or different electronics. They do have a lot of apps that will help lower the blue light on your computer screen, also on your phone, so you can look into some of those. But I would really focus on the sleep hygiene first, and then take melatonin as needed. For dosing, I would start small, like micro dosing, which is about 300 micrograms, about 2 hours before bed, to see if it kind of nudges your body into making its own melatonin. But if that doesn't do the trick, you can go up to 1 milligram, but just work your way up. You don't want to take more than what you need. And again, there's a lot of other things to kind of help with your sleep hygiene. Tea, having the lights a little bit lower, like amber colored lights, as opposed to bright ceiling lights. Again, just trying to get your body to calm down. And then hopefully when you hit the pillow, you'll be off to sleep without melatonin.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, another one. In fact, we have a lot of them. But the next one, I have someone who's relatively healthy and is experiencing significant hair loss, which is concerning them. They're not sure the extent to which it's related to age and hormones, but is asking, or they are asking if there are any supplements that might help with this or any testing they might undertake to get some answers here.
Yeah, so again, I'm not a practitioner, but something that I would hesitate to use a supplement because something's off. So your body's having a symptom of hair loss. So I would do a little bit more work to see what is possibly going on. Some things that would be worth looking into are probably looking at your thyroid and how that's operating. Because that low thyroid can cause hair loss, also hormone imbalances. So with the thyroid, you'd probably want to do a thyroid panel, which is a little bit more extensive than what most PCPs or allopathic practitioners will do. Usually they just do a TSH, but our practitioners here they are very knowledgeable with doing a lot of testing, like different hormone panels, thyroid panels, to kind of see what is the underlying cause of that, or even a micronutrient panel to see if there are a lot of deficiencies that could be affecting the thyroid, could be affecting hormones, or could be affecting your body's ability to produce more hair.
Okay.
So yeah, something to dive a little bit more deeper into.
Okay. You just used a term that someone had asked about, PCP level, unless I'm misunderstanding. What does that mean?
Well, I'm primary care
physician.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
I think, yep. All right. Very good. All right. Oh my gosh. So many questions. What would you suggest to replace vitamin K if someone is on a blood thinner like Coumadin or Xarelto?
So when it comes to Coumadin and vitamin K, while you don't want to supplement with it, you can consistently take vitamin K and consume vitamin K rich foods. What you just want to be consistent, and you want to work with your practitioner, whoever's monitoring your levels, to make sure that you're not consuming too much. So I think one of people tend to avoid, like, oh, I'm a Coumadin, I can't have a lot of leafy greens, but what you don't want to have is fluctuations. So having, a salad with kale every day, again, as long as you're consistent, again, also having some other vitamin K2 foods, such as, ghee is also really high in vitamin K2. Not high enough that I think that if you have it consistently would cause you problems, but one of the contraindications of Coumadin would be taking a supplement of vitamin K. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay. Is ground flax more bioavailable than the seed?
Yes, because when a seed, any type of seed, has a defense mechanism. So the seed is, it doesn't want to be broken down. It actually wants to be planted and produce, or reproduce. So I do, especially people with GI issues or impaired digestion, to grind it. But I also think that it makes the nutrients more bioavailable.
Okay.
Chia seeds too, as chia and flax to grind.
Very good. I have another question regarding Centella asiatica gotucola. What are the uses, benefits, and the recommended dosages?
Gluta is good for like varicose veins.
Mm-hmm.
It helps with circulation. So also good for, just relaxation. But for the dosages, I mean, I'm not an herbalist, so a lot of things depend on what type of, is it dried, is it the root? But I believe, so I think Gluta is about like 2,000 milligrams max per day. So you could take 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams twice a day, once or twice a day, depending on what your goals are and, the dose that gets you to see the results.
Okay. And then and then what about dandelion leaf? Same kind of question.
Yeah, so dandelion is really good for liver and kidney support. It is technically, it has diuretic properties. I think dandelion is good as like a tea. So again, when it comes to herbs, you can get them as teas, tinctures, dried herbs, different roots. So, but a lot of things like that would be great to have as a tea, kind of sipping it throughout the day. Teas are not as potent, but when you're just looking for overall health, I think, having a couple cups of tea are pretty good. I don't really think I had, it also is very high in other nutrients like potassium and vitamin K and vitamin C. So yeah, I think it's about 250 milligrams if you got them in the capsules, 2 to 3 times per day. But again, depending on what your goals are. So that's the beauty about herbs, is that one herb could be have a lot of different applications. And again, a lot of different forms. So that's why it's really helpful to work with, an experienced practitioner that can kind of help guide you to see which one would be most appropriate for you.
I really appreciate that. I am just we have so many questions here, and I'm conscious of the time. So why don't I do one or two more, but then what I can offer is, Jaimie, I know I can be in touch with you, and what I can do is relay those questions and then include them in the notes. So a week from today, for all of those who are tuned in or who are registered, you'll get in your inbox some links to this event, this recording, and some additional notes and things, and we can always put answers in there. Jaimie, does that work for you?
That sounds great to me.
All right, so let's see, I'm going to get to one more, and it's someone asking about chelation, asking whether chelation suppositories are effective as IV chelation. Can you speak to that briefly?
Yeah, so there are certain companies so most suppositories that are meant for chelation use EDTA. And they're about 600 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams is the dose per suppository. Now, there are companies that have that, they make suppositories, and they have done research showing that it can excrete the same amount of metals as IV chelation. I think it would depend. So yes, it can, but I also think that whether or not you get IV or you do suppositories is based on your personal goals. Is it a high, if you've had a recent exposure of, mercury or other types of metals, then maybe chelation IV would be best, because you want that immediate reaction or immediate, with removal of them. But then certain people, that might be too much for their body systems to handle. And so that we're doing a suppository every night could get their levels back down to where they should be, which is almost non-existent, but their body would be able to handle that. So, and also, the EDTA can bind onto other minerals. So that's something to keep in mind. So it would all have to be personal. Can they be just as effective? Yes, I do think that they can. It just depends on how fast, and again, working with a practitioner is always best, because they'll be able to help you determine, what your nutrient status is going into it, to see if you are, pulling out too many other minerals, as well as what you're trying to pull out. But again, cost is something to consider too. So yes, they can be just effective, but there's a lot of nuances to discuss with a practitioner.
Awesome. I appreciate your depth of insight. I'm going to share a link real quick before we wind down here for our next BioBites, which is on the myth of aging and the power of food. And I know it touches a lot on things Jaimie's talked today about, not being able to supplement your way out of a poor diet or lifestyle. And I know that's kind of come through in a number of ways, Jaimie, you've talked about today as well, in terms of sleep habits and things too. So I see that we have a handful of questions asking for recommendations about probiotics and what else? Questions about fish oil and protein powder. So again, I'll relay those to Jaimie and include answers in our notes. So if you asked a question in advance or live today and it hasn't been answered, I promise you we will get you some good information. And Jaimie, we're very grateful for both your time and your expertise. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, everyone, enjoy your day, and thanks for being with us. And we'll look forward to having you with us again soon, we hope.
All right, great. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep. Bye all.